Hi guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. Today I want to share with you the quarterly statistics or quarterly wrap-up, where I talk about my reading patterns for the past 3 months, and also talk about the books, my favorite books that I read this last quarter. The first thing I want to mention is that I read 39 books during January, February and March. I DNF'd 2 books and I read a total of 13,014 pages with an average of 331 pages per book. In terms of my genres, not surprisingly, most of it was fantasy, where I read 11 books, but then I also read 5 science fiction books, 5 mysteries, 4 thrillers, 7 urban fantasy. Actually, that's my second most read, but that's also part of like regular fantasy. But I just like to show that I read a lot of urban fantasy. It's my favorite genre, so I distinguish that between that. I read 4 thrillers, did I say that? And I read 3 horror books, 1 magical, 2 historicals, 1 magical realism and 1 contemporary. So a little bit of from all sorts of genres, which is my norm, I think. In terms of format, not surprisingly, the majority of the books that I read were audio. I've had a bit of a rough first quarter in terms of reading and picking up books. It hasn't been as easy for me as it has been before. I still listen to a lot of audios because I listen to audios when I work, when I do things at home and all of that, and that hasn't changed. So I've read 25 books in audio form, 4 books in hardback, 3 books in trade paperback, 3 mass market and 4 ebooks. So still I have read a little bit from all sorts of formats. In terms of length, not surprisingly, the majority is a full-length novel. I read 32 of those, and then I read 6 novellas and 1 short story collection. And in terms of age group, also the normal, pretty normal for me. I read 28 adult books, 6 YA and 5 middle grade books. In terms of how many books I've read per month, in January I read 12 books, in February I read 13 books, and in March I read 14 books. If you compare my statistics to last year, I read 15 to 16 books every month, almost, with 2 exceptions in terms of where it was lower and 2 exceptions where it was a lot higher. So I definitely see that my reading has changed a lot compared to that. I also read sort of shorter books for some reason, but if it's any consolation to myself, it seems that I'm reading 1 more book every month, so maybe I'll get back closer and back to my norm during April. Who knows? I've already finished quite a few things, but a lot of them were short, so we'll see how things goes. But I'm happy to see that at least it seems like I'm reading a little bit more with every month, so I'm happy about that. In terms of publication year, I have read 1 book that was published in the 50s, 2 that were published in the 80s, and 4 from the 90s. Then I read 9 books that were published in the 2000s, and then 2 books from 2010, 1 from 2011, 3 from 2012, 1 from 2015, 5 were published in 2018, 9 were published in 2019, and then I've read 2 books that were published this year. In terms of page length, I read 3 books that was between 100 and 199, meaning that I didn't read anything that was below 100 pages. I read 12 books between 200 and 299. I read 13 books between 300 and 399. Then I read 10 books between 400 and 499 pages. And then I read 1 book that was between 600 and 699 pages. The longest book that I read in the first quarter was Lethal White by Robert Galbraith, also known as J.K. Rowling. This is 650 pages. The shortest book that I read over the first quarter was All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman, which is 121 pages for this one. In terms of where I got my books from that I read, because I read so many audios, the majority of them have come from library and Storytel. 11 books were from the library, 15 was from Storytel, and 3 books from Audible. So I mean, some of the library books are ebooks, but the majority of them are audios. Then I read one book that was published in one book that I bought from Book Depository, 2 from Amazon. And I read one book from the Kindle store, one book that was purchased from Saxo, and I read 5 books that was purchased from awesomebooks.com. In terms of ratings, I read 3 books that were 2 stars, 1 that was 2.5 stars, 4 books that were 3 stars, 3 books that were 3.5 stars, 20 books that were 4 stars, 6 books that were 4.5 stars, and I read 2 books that were 5 stars. So this has definitely been my worst reading period in terms of ratings as well, because usually I'll have at least 5. Sometimes, mostly I always have at least a couple of 5 stars every month, but not this year. In terms of the series versus standalone, I read 28 books that were series books and 9 that were standalones, and of the series I started 8 new series and I continued in 17 of them. I completed 2 and I DNF'd 1 series. In terms of author gender, I read 10 books that were from a male author, 28 was from a female author, and then I had 1 book that was written by both. And in terms of author country, this is where I'm more shameful because I am terrible. I read 28 books from a US based author, 1 book from a Canadian, 8 books from UK, 1 book from Denmark, and 1 book from New Zealand. I feel like that's so terrible. Now those were all of the things I wanted to share with in terms of my statistics. So the next part is going to be my 5 favorite of the last quarter. Coming in as number 5 on the list is Murder on Bank Street by Victoria Thompson. This is the 10th book in the Gaslight Mystery series. This has been my favorite Gaslight Mystery book so far, by far. And I really enjoyed this one. This was a 4.5 stars for me, and I was really close to giving it a 5 stars. I was thinking about it for a while at least. I really genuinely enjoyed this one, and I felt like it had to be in my top 5 because it's one of my favorite series, and so I wanted to include it in this. This one just, I feel like all of the characters developed in a way that I really enjoyed, and a lot of things happened to the characters that I was really happy with. So I'm really happy about that. Coming in as number 4 is Come Tumbling Down by Shauna Maguire, the fifth book in the Wayward Children series. I really do enjoy this. Every time I pick it up, I feel like such a comfortable feeling, and like it was the right thing for me to pick it up at this specific moment. So I definitely really recommend this series. It's not for everybody, I know that, but if you have jived with some of the others, I think you'll find something in the majority of them. They have a lot of good messages and a lot of interesting characters that I really enjoy to follow. So overall, gave this 4.5 stars and really enjoyed it. Coming in as number 3 on my list is The Dragon Pearl by Yoon-Ha Lee. This is a middle grade book. It is, I think, a standalone. It follows this girl called Min, who is a fox spirit. And fox spirits are able to change into anything they want to, whether that being human, another animal, or like just a random thing, like a dead thing, you know, like a chair or a table. If they want to, they can shape into that. And our main character goes undercover when she finds out something happened to her brother, possibly. And also another thing that's important to know is that these characters are they decide themselves what sort of sex they are, and I thought that was a really cool thing. Majority decides to be women, but it is your own choice. You're not born a specific gender. So I thought that was really interesting. And she goes undercover as a boy on this cruise ship thing, trying to figure out more about the Dragon Pearl and what it's got to do with it. And I just genuinely really enjoyed it and thought it was such a fun ride, and I read it really quickly. And it was a lot better than I initially thought it was going to be. I didn't know what to expect from it, but I definitely enjoyed it. And coming in as number 2 is my one of my 5-star reads, and that is Diamond Fire. This is actually just a novella, so I felt a little bit weird about putting it here, but considering I've only given this one and another one 5 stars, I decided to add it because it was a 5 stars and I really enjoyed it. It was sort of in between 2 trilogies in the same series, I think, called the Hidden Legacy series by ILONA Andrews. And this one is sort of following the wedding reception of what's leading up to the wedding reception of our main characters from the first 3 books, but this is shown from the sister's perspective, as she's trying to be part of getting the wedding reception in function, and she sort of finds out that something is maybe going to be happening, and someone wants to kill the whole wedding reception, so she feels like she has to do something, and she definitely does, and some of her powers go through, and I think she's going to be the main character in the next series arc, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I really enjoyed it. I think ILONA Andrews writes really great urban fantasy, paranormal fantasy. Coming in as number 1 is possibly not surprising if you've been following me for the past, my most recent video where I talked about this book being a 5-star read, that is Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. This is the first Bradbury I've ever read, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was written really intelligent, and it was just sort of my sort of writing style, my sort of atmospheric sort of thing. The tone fit really well with the characters in this one. It is sort of, I will describe this as magical realism because there's definitely something magical about it, but you can't really put your finger on what it is. So it's not fantasy in that way, so I definitely put it on a magical realism. And we're following 2 young boys. The main characters of those 2 is called Douglas, but the other one's called Tom, and they're brothers. Tom is a little younger than Douglas, and it's sort of a year where they are in the summer holidays. They find out things. They discover that people around them, everyone ages and how everyone dies at some point, and it just sort of has a lot of deep messages, and I really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it, and will not be the last time I read any Bradbury, that's for sure. So my favorite of the first quarter is this one. I'm going to wrap this up really quickly because my battery is flashing at me. So this quarter has been a little bit weird, considering the books that I read was not my favorite. Like, I don't think a lot of them will come all-time favorites of the year, but at least I read something, and I feel like I'm getting places, even though I'm having a little bit of a hard time reading something now. I have been reading today, so props up for that. And I'm enjoying what I'm reading currently, so that's also a good thing. Yeah, but let me know in the comments down below how your first 3 months went. Have you discovered any new favorite books of all time? Also let me know about that. Is there any of these books that you've read that I've talked about, and also let me know about that, and let me know what you thought about them, if you agree with my opinions. That's all I have for you today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.